situation like that at an apartment, and we all just, like, all my roommates, they were like, well, what do we do with it? What do we do then? I was like, leave it alone. And they're like, what? I'm like, that thing's better than a spider. That thing will take care of all our pest problems. You know, all those roaches we've been dealing with? That thing will kill them.
Right? No, but the issue is that that'd be really ideal if Lola wasn't an indoor dog.
And she's not gonna die from eating which is what I'm guessing is what it was.
I don't think that's what they're worried about. I think they're more worried about the fact that if she does, like, quote unquote attack it when really all she does is play with creatures, then it'll make a mess, and Mom is very much squeamish about so if Nathan is squeamish about most things that are small and tiny and harmless, my mom is specifically about that with reptiles.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
people are afraid of stuff. That's fine. That's fine.
Well, our situation is we didn't have pets because we weren't allowed pets. Technically, that was just a wild animal that got into our apartment, and we made it a pet. So we pretty much just were like, okay, and we kept him around. Called him Guillermo.
Little Guillermo.
Yeah.
Scurrying around.
Yeah. Dude, our roaches, like, our roach problem died within, like, 2 weeks.
Hey,
like,
Stinky dog, what are you doing, Stinky dog? All right, let me open up the window so it cools down a little in here as well.
All right.
Yeah. Then winter hit, and then we don't know where Guillermo went after the winter. We don't know if he, like, moved on because he went into hibernation or if something got him. Just next summer, there was no Guillermo. Man, that apartment was weird. Had the microwave that ran with the door open.
I don't think it was a lizard.
Doors, the ceilings were so short that I had to worry about hitting my head if I so much stood on my tiptoes.
So I'm like, let me bring this box before someone gets delivery. So I dumped
just
it,
called
and it
that
just went
lizard a
like
mean
it.
name.
But it ran like this, where the 2 front feet go this way and the 2 back feet go the other way. It looked like
Oh my god.
She's so adorable.
Like the head, it looked like another head.
Here, hold on.
Do you know?
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Oh my god, we just got rid of someone's pet.
Well, you said it's still in the box.
No, I dumped it out. It ran under my car. Poor thing, that's why it was in the car. I mean, in the box.
So it stayed in the box because of that?
Okay, it stayed in the box the whole time. Then I'm like, let me bring this box in before someone thinks it's a delivery and tries to steal it. So I turned the box upside down and it went like this. It just landed there. And then I'm like, I went like this with the box to shoot it, and that's when it started running weird.
Okay.
But it wasn't a lizard tail. It was like a little...
Right, like it was like a round tail.
Yeah.
Like how some geckos have.
They do?
I think so.
I'll be back, guys.
It's because they can detach their tails when they feel threatened. So that one was probably growing it back. It had a scar.
Some of them can, like, detach their tails and when they're threatened, and then they'll just grow it back. Hence why it could
But
also
it wasn't
have
a
shapes.
lizard tail. It wasn't like a long
Right. You're saying it's not a long, thin tail,
No, it was like this, and then it went into a little ball, like a heart.
Yeah, it looked like a nub.
It looked like a
It
nub.
definitely got rid of its tail at some point.
It definitely got rid of its tail at some point, so it currently is regrowing it.
But it was bigger than the tail. It looked like
It got bigger. Right.
Here's the tail. Here's the tail.
So is it a wide tail or is it just a nub?
Right here.
Okay, so it was a wide tail at the end.
It went from thin to wide.
Okay.
No, not like wide, like it's growing, like a freaking another head.
Right. Okay, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say about this. I don't have a long-term lizards.
Okay, whatever. We're going on. I think it's a pet. Someone said, I don't know.
Okay, then you want to ask around the neighborhood?
No, I just feel bad for it now. They just stayed there.
What do you?
Alright, so I'm gonna give you an update.
Like, excuse me, has anyone seen my gecko?
Update on lizard story. My mom is still terrified of them and now feels bad for this one.
Oh my god.
We can hear like everything that's going on.
I know. I just wanted to say that again. The fat-tailed
Thank
ones
you.
are leopard geckos. Let me see.
Does it look like a leopard gecko?
I'm gonna look up what a leopard gecko looks like.
Because they are very distinct.
Yeah.
It definitely had it definitely had like a weird. Okay, so I got at least a look at it to see that its body was kind of like a greenish brown with a red line that went down the center of its body. So it was a different texture. Obviously, some creatures have like weird, like reptiles have all different sorts of patterns that they can get on them.
Okay, what about its feet? Were they like long nails or were like stubs?
Don't know. At this point, I just paid attention to getting it out, and Mom probably was not paying attention to its feet because she was more terrified of it. So yeah, there we go. Look up Yoshi Gecko. Oh, hold on. I think I know what a Yoshi Gecko looks like. I love them so much. Yeah, they do look different. Not necessarily that. I wasn't paying too much attention to it because for me it was just another lizard that wanders around. And like, let's say in the idea that it is someone's pet, it's got to be pretty far to have made it to not only wander outside of its own house, but to wander to the neighbor's house and then some. Don't most reptile owners like have their geckos? Like, granted, there's people who want to like hold their reptiles and like give them all the little pets and loves, but for one to like actually get that far away from where its cage is pretty significant, right?
No, they get out really easily. Actually, they're very good escape artists, especially ones that can climb and run fast.
This one cannot climb for the life of it.
No, baby.
It turned brown.
It was the color of the box when I dumped it out.
Cap.
Oh, so it camouflaged to look brown.
Yeah,
So it's most likely an anole. Yeah.
Wait, it's most likely a what?
An anole, which is one of the ones that only switch between two colors. Generally the males have the red stripe down the back.
Hold on, how do you spell that?
Anole.
No. Hey, what is it? Are you barking because there's an animal on the screen?
Anyway, just forgot to tell you that when I dumped it, it was a different color. It was like a reddish brown, like the box. How weird.
Yeah. Okay.
Alright, Lola, you're crazy.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Go. Yeah.
I wanted to give you the rest of my.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Come on, Lola.
We still have a little bit of time before the stream starts, so please, everyone, don't forget, stay hydrated, stay hungry. This is not sponsored by McDonald's, but I enjoy it. Man, could you imagine, like, because McDonald's to like sponsor, I think they pay good money for like advertisements and stuff because they can just do that. They're that successful. Let's see. Now I imagine Xeno's mom was gonna go. Yes, here's my friend. Ah! Fucking. I think reptiles are very neat. I love them so much.
They're very cuddly.
Reptiles are cool.
I don't know what you did out there, but don't fucking do it again. Cap.
Oh, hold on, that's right. For any of you guys who are my people in the stream, let me do this to help make it easier. I'm gonna screen share so that way you guys can catch up and see what I'm referring to as well. I have the screen share up, and that screen share will also allow you guys to listen to the lo-fi no copyright music that we have. They're very important. That's no copyright.
I know.
Isn't most lo-fi non-copyright?
You would think so, but I've seen like lo-fi Donkey Kong jungle beats, and like it sounds cool, but it incorporates music that's clearly from like Nintendo properties.
Oh.
If they have that going on, then they're gonna mute the stream for all that time.
Yeah.
Well, as long as the song is running.
I think so. There's also another option which I just showed Monkey how to do the other day, which is how to separate audio sources, so that way the stream only picks up what you want it to pick up, like how he only wants Discord to not be heard by the stream. No, Lola. No chicken nugget. But father, chicken
Oh,
nuggets,
what?
they call to me. So, it looks like we passed the 10-minute mark. And so with that, hello everybody. Welcome over back to Nerdy Talk with XenoLich. Today, just like with the Twitter poll, we have gone ahead and decided that today is going to be the D&D Workshop. More focused on DMs than players, unlike last time where it was like a general broad, I guess, knowledge of everything. And just like usual, we are incorporated by some lovely guests. Today's guests are Rogue, who you guys more know to be one of our Saturday players.
Hello.
Hive, who you all know as Quinn from our Tuesday group. I got Skittles. Skittles, who you all know. Oh, there you go. Skittles, who you all know from the Saturday group as well.
Hello.
And lastly, Maniacal, who is also part of the Saturday group. As more people come and go, you guys will probably recognize some more voices from any of our games, or maybe someone new will actually join us, and we'll go ahead and introduce them as their Discord name goes by. But today, we are going to go ahead and just give a dive into being a DM. This is more focused on any tips and tricks. So by all means, use this stream as a way to ask questions. So that way, if there's something you've been wondering about how it is to be a DM that maybe we didn't quite cover last time, this would definitely be a perfect place to talk about it. And with the floor open, I'll go ahead and just, before any of you guys ask questions, I'll give what it is to me to be a DM to me. Being a DM for me is very much a large part of being this kind of like main storyteller. Some of my favorite moments are dumping players into an instance and just watching the chaos unfold that they do. It's fun when you do homebrew stuff because for me, throughout the years, I've learned that instead of making a select campaign, I will make a broad world and I will put points of interest around the world. Of course, a lot of these points of interest can also help be created by players and their backstories to help flesh out the world. I am very big on the idea that let's make an adventure that focuses on the players, and if the players' ideas and backstories are too far apart to connect to each other, let's go ahead and tie them together with a big campaign that we can use from a point of interest. Part of being a DM is also being a little bit of a babysitter, knowing how to tell people like, hey, you gotta, I'm talking right now, so pay attention to this, otherwise you're gonna miss out on information. But at the same time, I am also not here to hurt my players for not paying attention. There's always something going on, internet connectivities. Maybe one of them is actually doing something in the background, and they are here because they really want to try their best to make it. So I have no problem giving my players a chance to recall information. So let's say they forgot something. I don't mind either outright telling them, or even if it feels like it's something that they should know because it was recently within the same session, I'll go ahead and have them do a history check or so forth if they forgot. So when you mix this part-time babysitter with the narrative storytelling, I think the only last part that is really important for me is having a general understanding of how the rules work. It is not necessary to remember word for word what every rule is. In fact, a lot of what I do is go back to the specific points. But I want to say, if you have a question, you'd be surprised by how much of that information is answered in the Dungeon Master's Guide. A lot of times we run into issues where sometimes players are going to fight overwhelming numbers of creatures. And so I was figuring out, like, what are we supposed to do when there's just... Oh, fucking... You took a French fry, you little cunt. So... Alright. Sit. Let's go. Sit. 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 Go. Oh, fucking... And so... When you have this question as to how things can go, you have to realize that the DM's guide will help answer a lot. Going back to that mob tactic where, let's say I have my 5 players, and to give them the sense that they're really fighting big numbers, I'll have them go against 100 creatures. Now, this does not mean I am going to roll 100 initiative checks on top of asking for my players' initiative checks. What it means instead is I can go over to the combat and right here in mob attacks. Mob attacks is a great way to designate groups or a singular group of creatures. For example, maybe with the 100, let's say 100 kobolds, I will have them divided into 10 groups to make it a little bit more manageable, but still something that represents an overwhelming force. And each 10 groups, rather than having each kobold be accounted for, you do what is the swarm idea, where you pool their hit points together and represent that as the whole. Every time the hit points goes down by an increment of a single kobold's health, then you would just lose one of the attacks. So, for example, let's say in mob attacks, instead of rolling for all the kobolds hitting, you just see what d20 roll would be needed versus the attackers. In fact, let me go ahead and one of my players, if one of you already can think of your AC for your character sheet off the top of your head, tell me what your AC is.
18.
All right, perfect. So we'll go with 18 for this. So with 18, let's go to monsters. Let's go to kobold. And let's pull this up. Kobold's got a +4 to hit. We go to this. So if the d20 roll needed is a 14, because 14 plus 4 is 18, we look at here. And every 3 kobolds gets a single attack in. And you typically are going to power down. That's the usual rule of thumb with D&D. So with 10 kobolds in a group, if I had these 10 go and attack Maniacal's character, out of those 10, every account of 3 gets an attack. So that's 1, 2, 3, hit. 1, 2, 3, hit. 1, 2, 3, hit. And now that we've hit the 10th, we just powered down, so that is not a hit. So of those 10, 3 of them got hits in, and we just roll the damage for 3 attacks that landed. There is no need to worry about hits or misses with mobs, but I will say be careful with this. You can change it. You can change it around. Just with a guaranteed hit tactic, you're looking at something that might kill your players if you really are strictly sticking it to this many are always going to hit. In the event of your players have already just gone through a big fight and they're jumping into another big mob tactic group because a player made a bad decision, you want to be careful with how you play with these around, lest you accidentally TPK your group because you are going by the way the book states. You don't always have to go by what the book states. It is up to a DM to use the book as a guide, as a reference material, and go off of there. Let me go ahead and say, what would you guys say are some of your biggest questions, seeing about what it is to be a DM, or maybe something that you've questioned from your tactics in the past?
So-
what are your feelings on like if you like one particular monster and another particular monster, but not each of them individually, just kind of mush them together into something unique but still the same stat box?
Let's see. So, give me an example of 2 creatures that you're thinking of off the top of your head.
I think when I did a campaign, it was gelatinous cube and then the ochre slime, I think is what it's called.
Okay.
So I liked the stat block for one thing, and I liked like the aesthetic of this other thing, and then just kind of merged the 2 together into a different blob.
All right. Here, so you said gelatinous cube and ochre jelly, right?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. IB view. Well, I'll go ahead and get to yours right after this explanation because this is a good one. So, you like the way the gelatinous cube works. You like the way the gelatinous cube works, but you think the ochre jelly has a nicer way to work around it. Or maybe it's the other way around. You like both creatures, but there's certain aspects you want to take of one or the other. So, homebrewing or updating monsters is kind of just one of those. It is up to you to determine how many hit points or the AC is. Now, slimes on the one hand, the ochre jelly stat block states that a standard ochre jelly has 45 hit points. Now, let's add a little bit of context into this. What if somehow this ochre jelly had such a bounty of food that it was able to constantly gorge itself, and it actually grew in size to the point where it could actually go big enough to fill in a full 10-foot by 10-foot hallway? Now you have an ochre jelly that has grown to the gelatinous cube size to have 84 hit points. And because it's constantly occupying dungeon spaces, it is forming this cube, but instead of being clear like the gelatinous cube is, you have something that resembles that of more like a mud texture. So this would be perfect if you really wanted to like say like a dwarven location that has a lot of dirt, mud, and stones, because the Orca Jelly could probably blend in relatively well there. Or you can even go along the ideas. It says right here, it's an unwitting servant. So Orca Jellies tend to actually be creatures that work for another, especially if you keep them fed. So you could totally run with this to change an Orca Jelly and bump it up to gelatinous cube level. Yeah, was that more along the lines of what you were thinking, or?
No, I just want to know how I felt about it.
Yeah. By all means, you can always update monster stats. You can increase the dice size. You can increase how many attacks it makes. You can increase or decrease the AC or hit points. It's all based off of what you wanted this to be. If you want to make a boss gelatinous cube that is like 30 feet by 30 feet and it moves at a slightly faster rate, by all means, do that. That is a pretty epic gelatinous cube. And at that point, I would call this the GGC, gigantic gelatinous cube. But yeah, I like this question. So, balancing out encounters, especially for low-level campaigns. So, how do I put it? A lot of what I'm gonna say is, I'm gonna explain this in two parts. One of which is using book knowledge, and the other one is using your own gut feeling. We'll start with the book knowledge since it's probably a better basis to go off of, and you can pull a lot more off of this, and then kind of make your own system based off of it. So, in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, there's an area that's for encounter building. In the event of, let's see, like level 1 or 2 adventures, do I go with regular animals or jump to monsters straight away? So, it depends. There are two types of fights I usually see it as. There's either solo monsters or multiple monsters. Solo monsters, it's a little hard to kind of process this, but when in doubt, you want to present something that's account for how much DPS your players can do, or like damage per DPR, damage per round. If you take that into account and you realize that the creature's hit points are way too low, it's probably not going to be a good fight, and the players are going to feel very underwhelmed, especially if it's like a 1 or 2 rounder. So we take 4 level 1 adventurers, and let's think about this. So even with 4 level 1 adventurers, a cleric has this is also why encounter building matters based off the party, because in the event of all fighters is a pretty easy thing to round out, because you could take their modifiers and you can see the damage die that they roll. If you're wondering how do you account for dice always have an average number. You can tell this based off of whatever the fixed hit points is for things. So for example, in a D6 case, it's 4. In a D8, it's 5. A D10 is 6, and a D12 is 7. So by that logic, a D4 would be 3. It's a little hard to say, but let's just go with this. So, you have a rogue, a fighter, a barbarian, and we'll say a wizard. Okay. Rogues take into account their sneak attack. So take for account the D6 that they get, maybe a D6 for their weapon attack, and if they're dual wielding, add an extra D6. Put the modifiers together, and so the rogue with 1, 2, 3 D6s, 6 is gonna average out to 4, so that's 12. Plus the rogue's modifier twice for the once for the modifier. Let's say the rogue really got lucky with the stats and got a +5. That's 11 points of damage that rogue is gonna do in this round. So if I throw a single goblin, they're going to annihilate it, because goblins have 7 hit points. On average, that rogue is going to do 11 points of damage in a single round, and so you have to account for that. Any melee class is pretty easy to account for because they always have set numbers because of the weapons. Now, when it gets tricky is when you have spellcasters. Spellcasters like clerics, wizards, and I want to say maybe druids in this, have some really powerful spells in their arsenal. Like level 1 wizards have access to magic missile, which is 3d force +1 that are guaranteed hits. You have clerics that have power. I believe it's guiding bolt that does like 4d8s, and that's a fucking huge number for a level 1 character. And druids, I think, also have some sort of damaging spell. I don't know druid spells too much as clerics and wizards, but you want to make sure that for solo monsters, you need to create something that has enough hit points to sustain what it's about to fight. And on top of this, its damage output needs to be high enough. There are creatures that are both tanky and high damage output, and that's kind of understandable. So let's take 4 character level, first level, with 6 characters. It says the challenge rating 2. Let's go ahead and see this. Monsters, challenge rating 2. I think a good example of this is a bandit. Oh no, we don't want oozes. We don't want just oozes specifically. Yes, bandit captain. Bandit captain is a super perfect example of this. Okay. Let's say 6 level 1 adventurers. We'll take into account all of this stuff. So the rogue does 11. The barbarian could potentially do 12. Yeah, well, I'll say 12. The fighter can maybe do 10. So right now we're going up, and up in numbers. You also should take into account the average dice roll. And in which case, if you're wondering what do you do with the D20, take into account 10 plus whatever their modifier is. This is also part of like why encounter building can be a little hard. And so it's usually good to like go based off of sometimes what the books are giving you. But Bandit Captain has 65 hit points. I kind of don't agree that a lone Bandit Captain is worth 6 first level adventurers. For example, Saturday Group. The Saturday Group, you guys fought not only a Bandit Captain, but you guys fought 8. It was 7 bandits. If I had removed the regular bandits, how fast do you think that fight would have gone?
Very
Faster.
quickly.
Yeah, that would end pretty quickly.
Yes. Especially if you account for spellcasters that can fire from a range, and the bandit captain can't really do much about that. And take into account the melee combatants who might give themselves advantage in some regard. The issue you have here is now a lone bandit captain cannot be enough for these people. These 6 first level people are going to wipe the bandit captain, and in the off chance that the bandit captain goes last in the initiative order, the fight becomes overwhelming and the bandit captain loses any and all flavor that he had. Now, as a DM, it's also like when we roll behind the screen, you can say when the bandit goes. You can give the bandit captain really good, just to outright say it's going to go first no matter what, and then it creates a sense of danger from the players as they realize how powerful it is. Also, thank you so much, PikaFan99, for the follow. And so, let's see, what's 10d8 plus 20? I don't get that. Oh, if you're wondering, so this is part of what it is to also manage your hit points. The bandit captain, so on average, the bandit captain has 65 hit points, which for the most part, that's what you guys fought. Now, let's say I do this. 10d8. If a d8's average is supposed to be 6 times 10 is 60, plus the 20 is going to be 80. No, sorry. 20 plus 20 is... hold on. It was 10, 6, 60, 20. Okay, yes. So, if the bandit captain had perfect rolls on these D8s, or always average, it would have 80 hit points. But the bandit captain's average hit points is set to be 65 to kind of dumb it down. So, if you're wondering how far or how little can you make the bandit captain's hit points, utilize the hit die there to realize that if it's 10d8s, the minimal hit points a bandit captain can have is 30, probably representing a weak bandit captain, and the maximum hit points is 100. Now, if the bandit captain that you guys fought had 100 hit points instead of 65, that is a huge difference. That bandit captain would probably have wiped the floor because he was given enough time with the amount of hit points he had. And mix that in fact that he had 7 bandits with him. Let's say we did nothing to the bandits and we bumped the bandits captain up to the maximum he could possibly have. This bandit captain would become a nightmare because you guys would be dropped before he could. And so you have to take into account hit points, take into account armor class, and take into account damage per round. If the fighter has a weapon that they're proficient with, that's a +2. With a +5 modifier if they got lucky, that's a +7. So a first level fighter has a +7 to hit, meaning that on average the fighter is going to be rolling 17s. This means that the bandit captain is a little bit has an AC that the fighter can almost always is more than average is going to hit. So right there, the bandit captain is a good challenge for him. But now let's say, for example, this dude instead had a 16. Now the bandit becomes much more terrifying because of his parry ability. The ability to add +2 to his AC to negate that one hit that the fighter gets per round. So depending on hit points can determine the threat and the way the captain's played. Yes, 100%. Utilize the fact that the tankier the more beefy your captain is, the higher his AC is, and the higher his damage is. That is what CR is used to determine. That's better what it should be to determine. Plus, the damage output of a bandit captain is really fucking high. On average, the bandit captain with 2 scimitar attacks and a dagger, if I didn't roll, I could say 2 scimitar attacks is 12, plus 5 from his dagger is 17. This means that if a bandit captain hit all of his attacks, and instead of rolling, I just stuck with the number there, a bandit captain would do 17 points of damage to a fighter at first level, that would outright down him.
My God.
And at minimal, because the bandit captain has 4 per hit, that means at minimal, if the bandit captain lands all of his hits, that's 12 points of damage instead. That's still a lot to a fighter at first level. A fighter at first level is guaranteed 10 hit points, plus the let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he went to 15 because he had a plus 5 con somehow. That's still a lot. That's 12 out of 15 hit points that this fighter is about to take. And so that's how encounter building should be done. Encounter building should be take into account the DPR on both sides, take into account the armor class on both sides, and take into account the hit points on both sides. Put a comparison chart and kind of just see your scaling. If they're about average, that can in some people can be a decent fight, but I think that's not. Players constantly look for a fight that gives them some sort of challenge, because when they break out into a fight, unless they're murder hobos, fights usually mean a lot. Fights in D&D are supposed to indicate that you are seeing an opposing threat, something that is blocking your path, and so you need to overcome the hurdle that is that. If this hurdle is your level and is kind of just equal to you and you outright just down it really fast, the players will never see that as a hurdle because it was just something that was there. Now, all of a sudden, let's do this. Here's the level. We bump the level higher so that way the bandits are just a little bit stronger than the players. And so with that, you now have a fight that really does feel like a challenge to the players. It is going to give them a sense of, we need to finish this fast, otherwise we are going to get down. And if a player drops, all of a sudden this scaling that's right here drops dramatically further and further, because the power on each side is now decreasing heavily. I hope that gave you a little bit more insight on what it is to do a little bit of encounter building. On the topic of encounter building, how are you guys feeling? Do you guys have any questions about that? Maybe something you might be wondering when it comes to monsters and like kind of ratings?
More like, so my question is like, how do you handle like surprise encounters?
Okay. In the event of you have something that can potentially sneak up on your players and get the surprise round in them, for that, I'd say make the monster, if we're going with that scaling, run with monsters that are equal to in level of them. Why? Because a surprise round matters a lot. A surprise round means that the players skip their first turns in combat. And it means that these creatures that are fighting them are going to get some hits in. In the off chance that you like miss and land, like, you know, you'll miss some, you're gonna hit some. That's still a big thing because the players are now at a disadvantage on the HP side, and that means they're fighting an uphill battle. If you are making a stealthy creature that is on par with what the player's DPS and HP is, that's fine. Now, if you're making a stealthy creature that's stronger than the players and tankier than the players, you are creating a significantly harder challenge. And in some cases, that's fine. Some cases, you need to present to the players how dangerous a location is, so you'll throw them a dangerous creature. But you have to make sure that the scaling isn't too different. Otherwise, your players are going to feel cheated out, like it was just guaranteed to be their loss the moment they stepped in somewhere.
Okay, so
I mean, sometimes the players need to be punished, but that's besides the point.
Here, I'll say this. The term players need to be punished is interesting because I think a player that deserves to be punished is one who is either taking away the enjoyment of others at the table, or the player. Oh, let me actually change this. Or the player is actually taking. Dog, can you do me a favor and not do that? Okay, I appreciate that so much. You're so smart, and I love you. And a player who goes wandering off by themselves, it kind of really sucks because I've had this happen before where a player who went wandering off by himself in Dungeon of the Mad Mage went into the wrong room, and he ended up getting surprised by two creatures that had dark vision when he did not, because all he had was a torch. So they saw him coming a mile away. They surprised him. Both of these creatures had the ability to stun the player. And because the player, they were like going before and after. So he stuns the player skips his turn. The player's turn ends and he breaks out of the stun. The next one immediately procs the stun again, allowing the next one to go. The player's turn comes up, he has to skip it because he's stunned and he breaks free. Then the stun re-procs. That fucking sucks for the player.
That happened to me.
That's also another thing that should be taken into account for. If the creature can inflict a status condition that the players are not immune to or resistant to, that also should go into the damage scaling.
Yeah. Okay, so let me also follow it up with so I know video games better than I know DMing, and I've done a couple classes of level design. So let's say you have your players come across something that we would say is a scripted event that, you know, they're going to lose, but it's to move them on to like another scene.
Okay.
Or it's like to move them on into a different section of the story or something.
If I may, so here, actually, no, I'll let you finish your thought.
Because in our Saturday group, we had something similar to that, where we woke up in the tanks. I can't remember.
Oh, you mean how we woke up in? We went through a portal. Somehow we woke up in tanks and what are those things called?
Well, we know we ended up at a inn, and we couldn't leave the inn, and we had to do a check to break out of the mind control that we ended up in the tank. But I'm talking about like if you did that with like, you know, an encounter, you know, you get your butt kicked, but you're not dead. You were just getting captured and
okay.
You were meant.
I'll say this about scripted events. First off, I as a video game player am not a fan of scripted events, particularly the ones that force you to lose the game, because part of playing D&D and playing video games is to escape the fantasy and feel like you have more. Now, there's a difference if the scripted event leads them to do further than that, which in most cases is usually what it is. You're scripting this so that way this drop in excitement is about to be better because it's scaling upward now. And so when you do a scripted event, you have to be careful with how players react. Some players might hate scripted events and will feel cheated, but when you present them with the prize soon enough, they will realize what the scripted event is for. Now, if your scripted event is purely to punish the players, that is a bit of a bad way to look at it. Think of, if you're using a scripted event, you're using it as a plot device to further the campaign and further their excitement. If you run a scripted event to punish the players for maybe something that was either out of their control or something because you particularly didn't enjoy the way the players handled it, then
That would just be being petty.
That's being petty. You're a petty DM if you use scripted events to force the story to go the way you want rather than add excitement to the players. That's also a little bit of a double-edged sword because sometimes the players need a little bit of guidance. So if they feel like they need guidance, scripted events are fine. If you're doing it because you don't like the way the players are playing the story wrong, that is not how it should be played. That is such a petty mentality, and that is not what D&D is about. D&D is about collaborative storytelling.
Yeah. Well, me as a DM, I would most likely use a scripted event, like depending on what it was, part of the story they got to where I'd probably use a scripted event depending on which character, which player seems like the most downcast, like whichever one feels like he's not, whichever player's not feeling like they're not contributing the most. I'd most likely use a scripted event like that to like give them a chance to feel like the hero.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, because you're adding into the excitement. Here, let me go ahead and answer this then. So, do you go full-on monster with encounters or animals like bats or boars? Very much like Skittles is saying, pretty much goes on the setting that you're in. But in the event that you're kind of figuring out what setting do I run because I want to make a campaign, but I don't know where to start, I'll ask you this. Part of me making stories comes from either something I recently enjoyed playing, something I've always wanted to play, or sometimes it's kind of just a whim at the moment. There's very much a lot of reference materials in a lot of my games because I very much enjoy it. I am a weeb, I am a nerd, and I am a dork. I fucking love anime. I love video game references, and I love Marvel stuff. So when you take these things, a lot of the stuff, it's like, you know, I really like the feeling that these guys got when they were fighting Thanos. Everyone fucking loves the hype from the Avengers movie, and if you don't, then that's on you. But it's like, I want to replicate that. And so you realize in order to replicate that, you have to properly scale it up. And so from there, you have the end game goal that you want, but how do you get to that end game goal? By creating the beginning and the middle. Creating the middle is by far some of the hardest stuff because you don't know what your players are going to do from beginning to end. But what you can at least do is try to figure out part of what made the Avengers so cool was that they were legendary heroes. They were heroes who were well known for their deeds. So start off with what you think would be how if you were in a fantasy time, what is a classic quest that you use to create a hero? It could be town's in trouble. It can be someone's been kidnapped, or it could be something about an object has been taken. You need to create a need that your players can fulfill. Timmy is stuck in a well, and all of the people we have in the town just aren't capable of going down there, or maybe the ones who are too afraid to go down there. And so in which case the player adventurers go down there and they find out that Timmy wasn't just stuck in the well. Timmy was kidnapped by a creature down there. And so in order to get to that creature, you need to go through this cavern system that's down there. And so what are things that fill caverns? Bats. Let's put in some snakes in there. Maybe let's put in some giant spiders. Let's put in some giant spiders in there. And finally, after going through all of these creatures, do they finally make it to the boss of the dungeon? Which is, you can either make it something that seems like it blends in, or here's a cool thing. Something that blends in adds into the world to help do world building. However, there's world building and then there's story building. World building is you putting things in there because it makes sense, and it gives the players that the world operates in certain rules. However, though, if you put in something that doesn't belong there, some players will question, why is this here? And so that is a story building plot. So world building, story building. Use these two at your own disposal. And it's kind of up to you whether or not you feel like the plot needs to be advanced forward, or just let the players explore the world. I'd like to create a homebrew world where the players can retire and live out their lives running a city or government, fulfilling fantasy. Funny enough, there are rules in the DMG about running a business. Running a government is more of just like, let your players explain the rules. And if you want to create complications, give them people who want to oppose their system.
Okay. And if... Okay, let me think about this question.
Here, while you're thinking about that, Hive Rogue Skittles, what about you guys? Any questions that you guys can think of so far?
Well, usually I always just think of storytelling, basically how one story interconnects with another, but as you said before, we can just workshop that and just make sure that everyone is connected in some way, little or big, right?
Yes and no. I want to say, okay, let's take, for example, the games that I make. A lot of the times, the games that we create are games where the players, when we were first getting together, some of us already knew each other for a bit of an extension because we had already been in conversations with one another through voice chats and stuff. And sometimes this is their introduction to the group. And so you have to realize that people who are being introduced into the group, you sometimes can't force them to get along with the other players because they're new to them. The dynamic that you're trying to create might not exist there innately. And so you need to put that into account when you are trying to come up with a... Oh, I'm sorry. Ugh. You need to put that into account when you are trying to do a story building or campaign building. So, while you can try to connect character backstories, you can give them a common goal, such as you all, through one way or another, you all have found yourselves in this tavern in this town, and when you guys are right now in the tavern, sitting at your different tables and stuff, trying to enjoy your meals, a group of bandits comes in, and specifically wants to fuck shit up. So they have some people watching the doors, and the bandit captain is going around trying to intimidate everyone. The players who want to either hide or go along or maybe oppose this will do something about it. And so, with this, you have created a situation that forces all of your players to have one goal, despite having different long-term goals themselves. Use outside forces that sometimes have nothing to do with the players to create common goals. Yes, baby, you get all the love and kisses.
All right. And how do you? And a question for me would be, how do you handle like NPC? How would you handle an NPC encounter for like, let's say you just have like a throwaway NPC that you weren't really expecting to do anything much with. Next thing you know, they're trying to become friends with that NPC. I know that it plays a lot on improv, but how do you keep it? How do you keep a good? How do you use that to maybe do story building or world building?
So, I would say this. Sometimes DMs will create NPCs because it's part of the world building. And it's like, to make this place feel more alive, I'm going to create NPC numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 to add some bodies into this place and give it that extra bit of life. Then all of a sudden you realize player 5 wants to interact with 2 of the NPCs. And you're like, they're kind of not here to interact, but I want to see what you want to go along with this. The player ends up talking to town guard number 1 to try to see if they can get some information. So, think to yourself, you place this NPC here for a reason. This NPC has to at least have some sort of context into the situation. This is, there's a thing in Xanathar's, in the player's handbook, and even the DMG, that explains players who want to talk to NPCs to gather information, do the rumor mill and such. So you have to remember that as much as the NPC was created to help world building and you're doing a lot of improv, the player's approaching that NPC because you've placed the NPC there with knowledge of his environment. I'm not just going to put a town guard in this city, and when they talk to him, he's a brain dead idiot. This town guard probably has a family. This town guard probably, I'm going to decide that this town guard that they wish to approach happens to actually have a little bit of context on what they need. Let's do the example of, I'm gonna approach the town guard and see if he knows anything about the murder case going on. He's a town guard. Why would he not know about the murder case? He probably has either heard a rumor mill about it, or he maybe knows someone who's directly involved in it. And so in which case you can kind of use your improv skills to decide which route you want to take him down. And then from there, just kind of roll with it. Eventually the NPC, though, because he is an NPC, he does not know enough that the players might want to know. So, you placed NPCs there for a reason. Why is that NPC there? Figure that out in the, like, you, if, what was it? Sally is in the church because she's praying to a god. So the players approach her. She is praying because she's a devout worshiper, and maybe now I'm just making this up on the spot, maybe she actually has a little bit of a hard life, and so church is her one solace. Religion is her one solace in life that she can rely on. All of a sudden, players want to know more about Sally's problems. So then you can decide either one, Sally feels that the players are pushing on her personal stuff, and so she is not accepting others, or you can run with it and say, you know what? Yes, I'm having a little bit of trouble. My son's been lost for a few days, and I think he's stuck in the well. Now, all of a sudden, that Timmy the Well plotline that we talked about a while ago, we've just circled it right back around to it.
So we created a catalyst.
Exactly.
In a sense.
Exactly. You have a plot that you want to run with, so you can try to find ways to help the players get back onto that road by using the NPCs that they talk to. And if the players are really huge on going against what you want, there's probably a good reason. The player either doesn't feel invested in the story, or probably wants to do this specifically to get at you. If the player's not invested into the story, make them invested in it by reading their backstories and figuring out how to tie it in. Maybe present to the players a prize that they'll do it that they would love to have for it. Some players, easiest thing, I will give you money for this. That's perfect. That's a great incentive. Players love this. Money means food, it means potions, it means weapons, it means armor, it means supplies. And so with that money that's been enticed, the players are going to go on this quest, find Timmy in the well, fight this boss monster, question why the boss monster is here, and now you have done world building with the NPC. You've done world building by placing the proper creatures in that path, in that quote-unquote dungeon, and you've created a story building element because you have presented a creature that is in an out-of-place location. And
Okay.
that right there is a one-shot.
Okay. All right, and now we've talked about like how to run encounters, how to make characters and stuff. But so let's say for people out there who are wanting to do a homebrew, what's a good way to start on making your own story as a DM? Like on figuring out which characters you want, what environment you want, like where are some good resources? Like you said, we're all nerds here. We all like geeky stuff. You play off like doing references and stuff like that and building a world from that and trying to make an epic feeling like you feel in watching a movie. What are some other things that some people could do to help with like their creative flow of making a homebrew story?
I think here's a good thing to also note this. As in art, as well as in life, we all are sponges that have absorbed information and use that information to reference everything. Whether or not it's something that you saw in Avatar: Last Airbender that helps you through your day, whether or not it's something from your childhood that has helped shape you to be the person you are, or whether or not it's something from a story you've read that reminds you how to be a better person or how to go about certain things. You are a sponge of information that relies on references. No matter what, this story, this plot that you want to make is a reference to something in some vague regard. I'll just name 5 different things that I could easily make a level 1 quest on. I'll even skip using the Timmy in the Well thing, because the main reason I just said Timmy in the Well is because that's a common joke from an old story. What's this? Timmy stuck in the well? That is a direct reference, and that is how I made that quest. Now all of a sudden I'm going to present another one. Lola's lost. My dog is lost, and now I need help finding her. My suit of armor has been stolen by a thief. This is very much indicated by any sort of story where some sort of MacGuffin has been stolen. You guys have found a strange stone that appears to be talking and having its own life form. This could be Harry Potter and Philosopher's Stone. This could be the Soul Stone from Marvel, or this could be just some sort of sentient rock. A ghost has come into my house and is currently possessed my house. I need help with it. That's a direct Mob Psycho reference. That's a Scooby-Doo reference. It can be whatever reference you want it to be, but regardless, you make quests because you think they're fucking cool. So, when you make this quest for a certain reason in mind, it's because you like the idea of this and you want to create that type of story. And now when it comes down to, like, now how do you get started with making a world? I want to say, don't worry about the shape of the world. The shape of the world will work. The shape of the world almost never directly affects what you need. If you need any of those quests to work, after you've made your world, you can just pick the quest up and drop it where you want it to be in that world. Because we've made quests that are not specifically tied to locations. Maybe the well one is specifically tied to location because you need some sort of underground water source for a well to make sense. Or even a dried up water source that this town used to rely on, and the well is just there more as a relic. And so you come up with small things that you want to inhabit the world. come up with towns that those quests can either revolve around, or just towns that you think are really cool. Once again, you pull from your references. I want to make an abandoned city that's filled with the undead. This is a direct reference, or could be a direct reference, to any Resident Evil game like Raccoon City. And so from there, we've taken this Raccoon City clone. We'll call it Tanuki Town, and we drop it off in this point in the world. And now that think of this droplet of water is that quest. I'm going to drop it on this piece of paper. What happens to water when it hits paper? Or let's give it like toilet paper, for example. What happens?
Usually falls apart.
Usually falls apart and
Spreads
spreads.
out.
And spreads. That one quest, now that we've created a Tanuki town that is a zombie-filled land, it spreads and starts affecting the nearby area. You realize that this whole area is lacking animals now. So this could be a forest that's lacking things. It could be a desert, and so these zombies are dried up, and that indicates the well that used to be here. But regardless, now that you've created this droplet that spreads, you now can build a world based off of that, because you have this one zombie-infested town. Why is it infested? There's a local wizard. Oh, look at this. I'm gonna make it that there's a local wizard. There's a wizard tower nearby, and that wizard maybe has been studying on the zombie effects, or maybe that's the wizard that caused this years ago, and he lives there. And so from there, this one quest has spawned world building, because we want to make it make sense. If you want a quest, if you really want to do a certain quest, drop that quest into a world that you make, and you will find ways to make it make sense.
All right.
Let's see.
It's like you don't really have to be that imaginative either if you just have that seed of a story.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. As well, here's another thing that also is good to know. Not everything has to lead in. You'll have players who might question, like, what about this that we encountered like 5 sessions ago? Not every DM, not everything has to lead to something. Sometimes things in the world just happen. You can explain it very simply as, that's just the way the world is. That's a part of history that people by now have long forgotten. Or that's just something I added in and I kind of didn't expect it to go further. You can either stop it short and say there is no more information on this place, or you can run with it. The usual rule of improv, as we said last time, is try it. I want to say you can't never say no, but you can try to say no a lot. It's better to run with things than it is to go against them. If you accept the change, then you will find yourself creating a world and a quest that is so much more than you thought. And because you got invested into it, you will find yourself making a lot more enjoyment for you and a lot more enjoyment for the players, because players love the idea that they're with you on this collaborative story. Hi, I seen your thing, Glad. Were you gonna ask something?
I forgot what it was.
Oh no.
Yeah, unfortunate.
Sure. Is there anything else you guys might be wondering?
Let me think. How do we go? I guess a good question would be how we go about loot.
That's a good one. Okay, so when in doubt, we already know the idea of money. Money is one of the easiest things to give players, but you kind of wonder, how much is too much? Think of what it is the players might need the money for. Let's say you know that one thing that players are always going to want to look for, and I guarantee you this, it's one of 3 different categories: upgrades, utility, or stupidity. We'll start with upgrades. Upgrades is the easiest thing to understand. The player wants a better weapon, the player wants better armor, or the player wants something that improves upon themselves, like a magic item. So then from there we realize, you have it in your mind how you plan to make upgrades cost, or you have it in your mind how magic items are going to cost or be found. You can sometimes make the loot that very upgrade that they were looking for, and the player's going to love that. You can make it a magic item. Players are going to love it. Either that, or they're going to realize it's kind of pointless and they're going to sell it, and they now have made money. But when in doubt, money is usually the best thing, and when you're trying to figure out how much money to give, take the amount of money it takes to have what you have in mind and divide it up throughout the location. If the player wants an item that costs 500 gold pieces, you can either make the entire place sparse of money because it makes sense because they're in a cave, and only when they get to this creature did they find out that the creature was actually hiding up some loot, and that loot happened to be 500 gold pieces. They use that money, they go get their upgrade, or along the lines of the quest. Once again, I'm gonna use that one shot we just made up on the spot today. Timmy's mom is going to offer them 100 gold pieces for helping out. When they go down to the dungeon, we know for a fact that they're going to be getting 100 gold pieces for finishing off this quest, and they really want this 500 gold piece item. From there, you can make either the 400 gold pieces sporadically placed throughout the dungeon, or you can even give them items that are worth towards that 400. So in the event of, I want to give them 10 gems that are each worth 40 gold pieces, or 4 gems that are worth 100, or some sort of sporadic number that adds in 400 on top of the 100 that they're getting for the quest, 500 in total. And now that they have the money, they're going to go get the upgrade, and they feel like the quest pushed them forward towards that. Think of what the players are looking for, and provide them with a means to get to that. Don't directly give it to them unless you feel like that they've earned it. And then from here, going along with that, upgrades, utility is another thing. Players are also going to look for potions, items that help them traverse through locations. And so, as much as that can be considered an upgrade in some regards, I really think that anything that helps the player do something that they couldn't have done before is a utility, whereas things that are improving upon what they currently can do is an upgrade. Go ahead and, same thing. Potions, standard potions cost 50 gold pieces. They want to buy 10 of those, that's 500. 100 for the quest, 400 throughout the dungeon, boom, you've made that. And lastly, is stupidity. Some players just want something that's fun. You'll see this a lot in just about every class. And I'll say Bard is probably the best example of, sometimes the Bard in their starting equipment, they had a specific idea for an item, and now it turns out that they don't want that. They instead want to somehow play giant trombones and become a one-man band. Alright, they want to become a one-man band. Find a means to help them get to that one-man band, and you'll find yourself realizing that the one-man band equipment cost about this many gold pieces for that item, this many gold pieces for that item, this many gold pieces for the last instrument, and a final set of gold pieces that allows you to put it all together as a suit of sorts. And so it turns out the total happens to be 500 gold pieces. It's a little expensive for that, but you can always increase or decrease it as you wish. But regardless, now that you know now that you know what they need in order to accomplish their goal, you have to provide them with the ways to get those means. And so they go on the quest, they go save the town. Maybe it's something that they happen to be doing on their own. Regardless, they find the money, they get this, or then maybe they find the components for that in that location. Put it here. Only provide components that allow them to get their means, though, if it makes sense. I'm not about to have them go down the well and find the one-man band equipment in there, because unless someone dropped it down there, it doesn't make sense for it to be there.
So what if you wanted to do something like, it's pay to what is it? Rent to own? Is that what I'm looking for? And you just want to make it like a continuous thing where the person that sold him the one-man band suit is constantly showing up, asking for a payment of whatever they can pay at that moment.
Why is this
that
person
way
asking? If you don't mind me asking, why is this person? So it's because they're renting to own. So you're saying the player is renting to own the object, right?
Yeah, and so now, because let's say I set it up to where it's a mysterious stranger who is able to sell whatever, kind of like a Deus Ex type thing, but it's just a mysterious stranger that if you wanted to make them like just a recurring character that shows up like to help out the D&D, to help out your players and stuff, but he's, it's like just some.
Okay, so here.
Oh, I know the character, the perfect character, Resident Evil 4, the mysterious stranger that's always like, that Leon's always buying stuff from.
Okay.
You make a character like that, and your player is doing like a rent to own from him.
Okay. So now let's do this. That mysterious stranger who constantly reappears, more than likely, if they're a reoccurring character, they're there because it's a story reason, right? Usually,
you can make it to where the mysterious.
Sorry, go for it.
I was gonna say you can make it to where the mysterious stranger is the big bad the entire time, causing mayhem that makes the adventurers have to go to him to buy equipment from him in the first place.
And now you're rolling with it. Now you're rolling with it because you've made an NPC that while they feel like they have a place in the world, you mainly made them because they were a story element. And right there, you're already coming up with homebrew stuff, Maniacal. You yourself have made a character that, because the players have a means to accomplish something, the person who's providing them this has to be the BBEG. A lot of times, that's how you hide the BBEG under players' noses, so if an NPC is helping them, but they feel like the NPC is helping them for an ulterior motive, that's how players are like, this is totally the BBEG. But when that motive for the NPC is to get rich, to have a successful business, that seems like just standard NPC. Every NPC merchant just wants to have a successful business. So you've hidden their motives behind reasonable world building tactics. And now you've made a BBEG that's hidden under plain sight. How you feel about that? You just made that up on your own.
Yes.
Let's see. Rogue, what about you? What do you have anything you've been wondering yourself?
We're all talking about distributing loot, but what if the loot's trapped? Oh, speaking of which, traps. Like in your world, if you're making a dungeon or wherever, traps, enemies just popping up out of nowhere. Then some checks that you have to do to make sure that the monsters don't see you, or making sure that you don't screw over your whole party.
Okay. I would say same thing as encounter building. Traps are a very important bit when you're realizing encounter building, because traps, funny enough, according to the DMG, traps have their own AC and hit points. You can destroy traps with the DC check, and so think of that DC instead as the trap's AC, and think of disarming the trap as though it only had 1 hit point. This now accounts for something that you've now made an encounter with it. The trap does 10 points of damage to anyone who comes in contact with it or triggers it. And so that trap, because it does 10 points of damage, and we'll also consider traps almost always to have the surprise round thing on them. So it's like a guaranteed first hit. The player who triggers the trap takes the damage, and now they've been hit. The trap has gotten the upper hand on them, and so they either need to do something about this trap if it's a reoccurring element, or realize that the trap is part of a story building / world building device that to give them a heads up about what's to come. This is a huge thing as well. So pulling from one of my more favorite YouTube videos about like the way game design is, and from I think it's like Ego Raptor's old Mega Man video. So
oh yeah,
yes, that's what started my journey into wanting to do like world building / game design. So when you make something, you put it in there because it makes sense, but also it's to allude as to what's to come. I'm gonna make up something right now. Cursed library, okay? A cursed library, when you're entering it, let's say the players enter it through what appears to be the front door, and in this grand entrance of a library, there's a bunch of bookshelves in this. Let's make some of these books animated, and these animated books fly at the players as soon as they enter the library. And now our players have an understanding that this library, on top of being abandoned, it has animated objects. So now they're on the lookout for animated objects. They go further into the library, fight a few more animated books that they were now expecting, and so what was actually just provided in Candlekeep is animated bookshelves. So the players think they have it in their heads. They know what to expect out of the dungeon. When all of a sudden a bookshelf goes slamming onto them, they think it's a trap at first, but then they realize the bookshelf is constantly slamming and slamming and slamming, and now you have a combat encounter. And so Now our players are aware of bookshelves being animated. They are aware of books being animated. Now our players are going to start questioning what else can be animated. They're going to start attacking objects in the environment because they're worried about what's to come. And so the big twist is that we've now made the final boss something that, while it looks animated, it's actually being controlled by a wizard who's in the background using telekinesis to move the object to attack them. And so it turns out the BBEG of this abandoned library is a dude who's just constantly trying to be studying and reading in his own time, and he hates when people come in to disturb him. So that's why he created animated bookshelves and books, and why, like, to trick them at the very end, he creates an almost indestructible item that just seems to be attacking them when they don't realize it's not animated. It's just being moved by telekinesis.
So really quick though, because you say that it's making them paranoid to where they're attacking inanimate objects all the time. Wouldn't that start making them have an insanity?
And now you're
paranoia?
once again, dude, it surprised me that you're excited to be a DM. You're already thinking like one. You have ideas that already know how to push the players to understand that if the players are starting to get paranoid, you throw an insanity check their way because of their anxiousness, their paranoia, and so because of that, the players now understand if they're paranoid of everything, then they're never going to get far. So they just try to trek on forward. And so now you've introduced two different objects the first object was to introduce them to how the dungeon works. The second object was to start paranoiing them. And the insanity check was now to let them understand, while it's okay to be paranoid, they can't push that. And so you're sculpting them into realizing how this dungeon is working and how the dungeon is not only messing with them physically, but mentally as well. And then finally they get to the boss, they fight the wizard, and they understand. Then they talk to the wizard. The wizard's going to be pissed at them, tell them to get the fuck out because this is my study place. And the players are going to do one or two things. Technically three. Either kill the wizard for striking at them first, talk to the wizard, figure out what's going on, or try to sleep with the wizard. There's always that player.
How hot is this wizard?
This wizard.
Kind of hot, or are we talking
This
like,
wizard, while he has
Why
this
are we
very
so
long,
shallow? Why
right?
can't we just appreciate the wizard for everything that it brings to the
Listen,
table?
this wizard probably doesn't wash himself, okay? Lives in a dusty ass like place like that.
So
Come on.
use the cleansing stone. Come on.
Actually, yeah, cleansing stones are another
Well-
way. But then you realize that the wizard, I may not be physically prowessed, but my telekinesis skills are unmatched. Watch as I make this flying dildo appear.
Okay,
okay.
All right.
I'm leaving.
Well,
I'm leaving the manor. I am gone. I'm just. I didn't sign up for this one.
And so you realize that now we've completely changed it. The wizard realizes that our players are horny and is now going to use that against them by summoning objects that are going to keep the players trapped there, as this wizard is now a sexual deviant.
Ooh.
And so
robotic.
And so now it's just, we've rolled with it. We've expected one of two outcomes, but because of the fact that there's that third outcome that maybe you or yourself weren't expecting because you built up the wizard to be this, we didn't say no. As much as when you guys were just saying this stuff, I rolled with it rather than kept with whether I was going with. And now the wizard became someone who, on top of wanting to use this library to study in peace, this wizard is also a closet, like someone who has lived a sheltered life and has a very high sex drive to the point where he does crazy stuff with it. And that once again has now added into building this wizard to be more than what he originally intended was, and also adding into the players' joy and excitement because you've given them what they wanted, and then you turned it against them.
Well, there's the joke I was looking for. He's a nymphomancer.
There you go. Now you've made that. He's officially an NPC villain.
Ah, shit, nymphomancer. This shit's gonna get weird.
Everybody get down. Shit's gonna
So-
get weird.
There's look at that. Like this is part of what it is to create stuff. And you guys now that you're realizing this, have probably seen it in the campaigns where it's just like, oh man, I've heard this quote. Man, I can't believe he had this planned out for us. Haha, yeah, planned. Meanwhile, like behind the DM screen, it's just roll with it.
Yeah.
Still wish one of them asked the Oracle who Joe was.
I know, right? Oh my god. As a side note, that was one of my favorite things. I love sometimes presenting the players too many options, and when they like start doing that, like the fact is they're like, wait a minute, what kind of questions can we ask? Well, now that you've asked, it's like, fuck, okay. Then all of a sudden, my brother came back and he's like, hey guys, I just got back, what did I miss? And there's another one, and then like the player who thought he had it in his head was like, alright guys, so is that how I should phrase the question? And then there it is. Now the players are just like, oh fuck.
Oh man, why'd you have to speak?
It's great. You realize it's just, you are supposed roll with it while having a good understanding of the rules. And once again, you don't need to memorize the rules. If you have a sort of context or some sort of thing to go back to recall how the rules work, that's more than fine. A lot of the times D&D, players are going to ask questions, DMs are going to question themselves, and they're just going to realize, I'm just going to look back at my notes or look back in the text and realize what it is. Or even just a simple Google question it. Oh, so this is how that works. Okay, there we go. Now I'm going to go back to doing this.
Yeah, since being on the internet, I'm very surprised to see how little people use the resources available to them for finding information.
On top of this,
Yeah, it is very surprising.
On top of this, one resource that I was very surprised about. Let me see if I can pull it up right here. See. See, there's something that was right here. I'm running on what I have left to watch the stream. Oh, thank you so much, JTR. I appreciate that. Okay. One of the rule creators. Huh. Oh, here it is. This is who I meant to go for. Okay. One of the people who is who's a big advocate on helping out the community is Jeremy Crawford. He's the principal rule designers of Dungeons and Dragons over at Wizards of the Coast. Do you understand? There is no level of absolute nerd Chad that I've ever seen than someone who not only writes the rules of the game, but also when people ask him a question on Twitter, he will almost always reply to that question with the answer.
He's always on Twitter answering questions.
That's what's so nuts about him. It's like, dude, how are you this fucking cool? You not only like help design what is essentially one of the best things for like collaborative storytelling and tabletop games, you also go a step further and pay attention to the community to help them out with it. It is a very commendable thing. He is very much a lot of my respect for not only having that knowledge, but if you pay attention to what he says is like what he'll do is sometimes his answer to the question is a direct answer, but other times he'll not only answer your question, but he'll also point you to the reference material. He'll say, it's on this page of the DMG in this area. And so the Dungeon Master goes there, looks at it, and now that not only do they have the direct answer from Jeremy Crawford, they also know where to look back to if they have that question again in the future or need clarification on that. Which, once again, that just goes to show. It might not even be a matter of Jeremy Crawford has all the rules memorized, and I'd be fucking surprised if he actually does, but he at least knows where to look because those are his notes, his text, and his references to go back to. God, I fucking love fries. What a great invention French fries were.
I think they were made by accident, if I remember correctly.
Oh, that's actually really cool.
I had I actually now need to Google that.
Here. So while you're doing that, I'm gonna bring up a topic that is always one of my favorite things to do. So we've made our campaigns, we've made our world, and our players are adding into this world using their background and such. One of my favorite things to do is making a villain. And if there's anything I love the DMG for, it's maybe even going back as references for villains. For example, it breaks it down into villain schemes, methods, and weaknesses. Even sometimes secret weaknesses are also a thing. But let's take a look at this. So in the event of the villain scheme, each of you roll me a d8.
Alright.
4.
Alright. Let's see, so I'm hearing a 4. Go ahead and have your number memorized, and when I actually here, have your number memorized that you roll, and when I call upon you, tell me your number, and then we're gonna delve further into that. And then
Okay.
tell me okay when you've all done it.
Okay.
Alright. And once again, it was the D8. If you guys are remembering. But for now,
Oh, wow.
I'll go ahead and start
Do
with.
you want me to reroll? Or do you want to reroll?
Oh no! If it's a tie, by all means keep it. You're gonna want to know more. So let's start with Maniacal. You said you were the one who got a 4, right?
Yes.
Okay. By their actions, villains provide job security for heroes. Chapter 3 helps you determine suitable villains for your adventures. With this section helps you flesh out their evil schemes, methods, and weaknesses. Let the table that follow inspire you. That's a key part. It inspires you. It should not be a direct you have to do this. So, with 4, the villain's scheme is mayhem. Now, check this out. Roll a d6, Maniacal.
Okay. Rolled a 2.
Okay, so the villain wants to cause mayhem, and with a 2, by enacting the vengeful will of a god or patron, this villain knows that some of the most powerful things in this world are the gods themselves. So, what he wants to do, he wants to piss off a god so much that the god will call upon like their power onto the world.
I just imagine like how they do it. They're just sitting there going like, "I'm not touching you."
You want to know what this makes me think of? This makes me think of this. You don't have the power to stop me. I don't. But he does. Thor, pointing to the fucking Ragnarok, just yes. Yeah, that is mayhem by enacting the vengeful will of a god or patron. But it was placed in the hero's hands as a Deus Ex Machina versus a villain who might use this against the players. And so the player's goal, now that we know the villain's goal is to cause mayhem by enacting the vengeful will of a god or patron, the heroes have to help this by stopping the villain's plan or getting ready to appease the god and show the god that the villain's wrong. This world may be filled with war and bloodshed, but there's so much good in it. We are examples of that by helping out the world. And so now that we understand this, let me hear from Skittles. What did you roll for your D8?
2.
2? All right. So the villain scheme is influence. Please roll a D4.
4.
So the villain seeks influence, and he will place a pawn in position of power. This is a very good one right here. And you know what? As a meme joke, let's do this.
Okay.
Kanye West has now become president, but really it was Kim.
Oh,
it was.
About this.
Gross, ew.
But now,
Yo,
in
Kanye,
the background of this, you realize the true villain was Kim because it was her influence by placing a pawn in position of power.
Don't do this to Kanye. No.
And so, this is an example of now someone who seeks to do influence by placing a pawn in position of power. So what do players have to do? They have to stop this, of course. But the issue is, someone who's doing this is a background, a puppet master. So some of the harder part is showing the players how there is a puppet master in the background. Let the cover villain not seem like he's really capable of a lot of what is being caused here. And maybe you realize that the villain doesn't realize a lot of what's going on there because he's just a pawn. Let's go ahead and see. Rogue, what did you roll with your D8?
My D8, I got an 8.
An 8? Okay. So this villain seeks wealth. Please roll a D4.
Four.
Okay. So this villain seeks wealth, and he will steal land, goods, or money. You want to know what is the best villain I can think of for this exact thing? Now, tell me, what do you all think of yodeling?
Oh my god, no.
If any of you recall the Disney movie Home on the Ranch, the villain who is very much a big yodeler, he is a bard. This is a bard villain, by the way. A very large and in charge bard villain who has a bit of an anger complex when people point out how people don't like yodeling. He seeks wealth by stealing land, goods, or money. And so, our people have to stop this by either getting the money back, they have to stop him, or save the lands that he is trying to take. And welcome, Delta. Right now we're going in on about what it is to create a villain. In fact, I'm gonna ask Hive about his in a second. JTR and Delta, if you guys want to help create a villain, why don't you guys go ahead and roll a d8 so we see where you guys land on the table. Remember that even if you get the same number as one of our guests here, you can still potentially get a different result because of how they go about getting their scheme accomplished. And now with that in mind, Hive, what did you end up rolling?
I rolled a 2.
Okay, so let's go ahead and roll a d4. If you get a 4, then I'll ask for a reroll.
I got a 4. Wait, no, I got a 1. Okay.
Yeah.
Jeez, that was weird. Like.
Okay,
I
so-
got a 1.
Your villain seeks influence, but instead of placing upon a position of power, this villain wants to seize a position or power of title. Super easy to understand because instead of being the puppet master, this is the one who wants to rule the world, right? Or he wants to be king of this country because being king of the land matters. There's so many. This is like a classic villain thing, right? They want to become the king and they want to become the ruler because influence is power to them. Maybe they can even have a Napoleon complex, and they're like, it's Ripto from Spyro, who like, I'm gonna rule Avalar, and then people will realize that my size is not to be messed with.
Lord Farquaad.
Right? Exactly. Oh man, that'd be great. All right, so here, gonna mainly listen to Cookie right now. Okay, so then from here, Delta, we're gonna run with your 7. So your villain actually seeks revenge. So go ahead and roll a d4 then. I know you're cooking right now. This is gonna be like a little quick, like, tap the d4, let's see whatever. Where the hell is... Here, while we wait for Delta to do that, here's a cool way to take a look at this. So now, I'm gonna go ahead and head on back to actually, hold on. I'm gonna go back to whose was it? Wealth. Rogue. Yours was wealth and stealing lands, goods, or money, right?
Yes.
Okay. So now we understand what the villain wants. He wants wealth, and this is his scheme to go about it. So what about his methods? Now here's where it gets crazier. Let's roll a d20. In fact, everyone else, while Rogue is about to tell me his, everyone else also roll a d20 for your method.
Ew.
I hate this bot so much.
Ew.
What am I rolling?
You're gonna roll a d20 for the method.
Okay.
Ooh, I got
Okay.
14.
That's
Okay,
'Cause
14.
why I don't
So-
use a brain.
So let's take this now, okay? So your villain seeks wealth by stealing lands, goods, or money, right?
Yep.
Now, because you rolled a 14, the villain's method is through politics, actually. So now roll a d6.
God, he's Nestle.
This is where the rabbit folk comes in now. The rabbit folk leader.
It's 6.
6? Okay.
JTR got a 3 and 4.
Perfect. I'll go ahead and get to JTR in a bit then. So with your politics, you got a 6. So this villain, check this out. He seeks wealth by stealing goods, land, or money. And because his method is through politics, because you got a 6, he's raising taxes. So this is a villain who is already in a position of power and is probably a corrupt leader. And so what does he do? When because his whole thing is by raising the taxes of the land, you realize that like this villain's kind of fucked up because there's probably a lot of poverty in his kingdom. So now that we have this villain's goal and his methods, where he just wants money, money, money. This is King John, right? So we're raising taxes and we're keeping this going. This villain is in a position of power, so now that we know the villain's overall goal and the fact that he's already in a position of power, check this out. Boop! That droplet that dropped on the piece of paper that splashes all over now has created an entire land where you realize the people are living poor lives. Sometimes the livestock might either be dying because of lack of food or lack of care due to the fact that the people don't have enough money for that. There's a lot of people who have succumbed to stealing for their stuff, and so there's a lot of bandits that are created in this kingdom. In fact, there's probably bandits that are on the road because they use this money to provide for their family, or they also seek wealth just like the villain because they are inspired by the cruel king. And now, with this villain, we have created an entire world of possibilities because we know what his method is and how the land is being affected by this. And to wrap yours up, because this is a very cool thing, go ahead and roll a d8 for his weakness.
Two.
Okay, check this out. The villain's power is broken if the death of its true love is avenged. So now, not only do we have a villain who seeks money through politics by raising the taxes, we now realize that the villain, now that we know his true love has died and their love was never avenged, we've created a villain who is in a great depressive state. If only he had enough money to bring his wife back. In fact, it turns out now we're doing this. This villain needs money to bring his queen back to life. But he doesn't want anyone to know this. So he takes these corrupt methods by raising the taxes, getting so much money from the people, but not realizing the problem he's creating in his own kingdom, all to bring back his wife, and because he can't let go of the past. And the longer it takes to bring his wife back, the more expensive the money it takes to bring her back. At first, all he needed was a measly 100 gold, but because they didn't get that to him in time, now all of a sudden it went to 1,000, then 10,000, and before you know it, he has to take money from the land in order to get his wife back, and he's just so lost in his own depressive state that he becomes the villain of his own kingdom.
Oh, that's very interesting.
And so, part of this villain's weakness is helping. Maybe the villain is this can't be a physical thing. You can kill the king and someone else will take his place. But now we've made someone who maybe fighting isn't the way to beat them. Maybe what it actually is you just need to help them move on. You need to help them find peace in themselves. And so you need to collect the things that were near and dear to his wife's heart and find the people who mattered a lot to her. And it is through the power of collecting these MacGuffins to the story, or even a memento of the wife, that you have now defeated the villain. But
It doesn't always have to be fighting.
exactly, beating doesn't always have to be fighting. Sometimes it really is helping the villain or helping the location. The circumstances of what caused this havoc can be honestly through really good means, but they aren't really good outcomes. Here, I'm gonna go ahead and take a look at what JTR got first before you do this. So, JTR, your villain, you rolled a 3 for your villain's scheme, which is magic, and with a D, with the roll you got, oh, your DM scheme is about magic, and because of the 4, he offers sacrifices to your deity. So this is a classic. I want power, more. And in order to do this, he has to power. Exactly. He starts a cult, and the people who are in this cult don't realize that this villain is using them to he's using them to bring up stuff, only for him to murder them all back to seek the ultimate amount of power in the world. And for the one for your villain's weakness, JTR,
Women.
a hidden object holds the villain's soul. So now, what did we just make? A lich. He seeks magic. He seeks to sacrifice souls, and the only thing that is his weakness is a hidden object that holds his soul, aka the phylactery. And thus, the villain gets started. The cult has been created, and the world is being built. And on top of this, take a look at this. So remember how I mentioned that was one droplet from the first villain, right? The corrupt king. It turns out that this one droplet only covers this much of land. So head far enough away, put the other droplet from this lich, and now these two lands are right next to each other. And so when you start crossing or merging into the other kingdom, you notice that this kingdom's thriving. In fact, this kingdom's doing very well. People are really happy. There's a religion that they're all building up around. But you then realize that there's a villain over here. There's a villain here. There's a villain here. With, let's say, for example, we're going to go ahead and run with Skittles, which to make our third villain. So, babe, you ended up rolling your villain who is influenced by placing a pawn in position of power, correct?
Yes.
What was your d20?
1.
1. Agricultural devastation.
Oh
Ooh.
no!
Please roll a d4.
See, now I am more Nestle. Oh no.
So
Yeah, so this is a d4 to determine what method they go about doing agricultural devastation.
Also a 1.
So they are doing a blight on the land.
Oh
man.
shit.
They're just destroying crops, and with those crops. And now check this out. That method. Now, how does a villain who gain this influence by destroying the land? Because the blight that they're causing in the land is being tossed as blame to their competitor, or at least to their pawn's competitor.
Or you do like a Hexus from the Fern Gully situation,
Mm-hmm.
where the blame gets put on the logging company.
Yes, and now we've created this agricultural devastation of blight that the person who seems to be the answer to everyone's problems is this pawn in position of power. In fact, the players probably might be helping this pawn because at first they believe the pawn that it's the other person's fault. And so the villain of this campaign is being redirected to someone for the players. And so as the players start uncovering the story more and more, they realize the blight doesn't seem like it's his problem. So we have to talk to the dude. The dude says, I don't know how they're being caused. You have to figure this out. There's traces, there's constant going back to this pawn, but the pawn has no idea what's going on. So then the players start uncovering the person who's behind the position of power. And now you're constantly making a really fucking cool campaign with these simple roles. And all of these, by the way, are influences. We've only taken each of these roles that we're getting are like one-worded things or like a quick line, but we're running with it so much more. And now, babe, go ahead and roll the d8 for the villain's weakness.
ah shit, drop my dice.
If I get another run, another one, I'm never using a fray again.
All right.
Aha, 3.
So
Sorry, Sharon.
the villain is weakened in the
Drop my
presence.
d10.
Here we go. The villain is weakened in the presence of a particular object. So now
It's reverse Captain Blended.
now you ready for this? I'm gonna take the comedic approach with this. The villain is this dirty, horrible monster that's using their pawn. And now, in the comedic weakness, I present to you soap! Fear the soap! Now!
Yes.
Clean!
So that's how you beat them, is the cleansing stone.
So
Exactly.
So he's
Oh,
he's
no.
Mole
It's like
from
9th level
fucking
spells,
Atlantis.
whatever.
Mhm.
Cleansing stone, yes.
And now check this out. The villain is only weakened when they're cleansed. And so you've made a villain who has this kind of like layer of like, let's say like dirty magic around them. Literal dirty magic. And only when one of your players manages to get close enough and use an action to cleanse them does the dirty layer go away. And now the villain is no longer invulnerable to damage.
Oh my god.
Now, how fucking nuts is this? We've made the influence of power over here. Bloop. We've made the person who seeks magic and the cult, and we've also now made the. Hold on, I'm now forgetting the first one we made. This was wealth, stealing lands, good or money, corrupt kingdom, politics that are going on in this kingdom. And this kingdom seems fine. In fact, it's thriving off a very lovely religion, which turns out to be a cult. And so, boop, boop, boop. And all we're doing, by the way, now with all these in mind, how are these droplets forming and what is exactly happening here? So, some of the easiest method when it comes to making your world is going to be take a piece of paper. If you have some rice, drop the rice. If you have those very hard pinto Mexican beans, I don't know what those actually are. I think they're pinto beans, but you drop them.
It's a pinto.
Yeah. And so you can even just go to random map generators online and find ways to make it. And so you take that map, you print it out, you trace over it, or maybe you have like an art program that you can do it on, or maybe you can actually just do it on like paint or whatever you have. And so those droplets, you're now going to take the droplet, drop the kingdom, make some towns here, connect the towns with roads. Oh, now that this kingdom is so vast, I'm going to start the merge into this kingdom over here. And it's just boom, boom, boom. What's this? You actually have an entire land, not just a land, you have an entire country with 3 kingdoms in it. And each kingdom has their own fucking problem with their own villains and their own world building and their own side quests that have to tie into the main quest. How nuts is this, guys?
God.
And this is all world building. World building is by far, it's one of the most fun you're ever gonna have. I promise you this. And on top of this, because we have world built so much, we understand that the players, once again, if they're not interested in this, that's okay. Why? Because we have a whole 2, 3, 4, 5 other villains in other lands of this country that the players are going to travel to and encounter problems there. I love this is part of why I really love D&D. It's really, your creativity is going to go so far, and with this table we have presented something that allows you to really get your thinking skills out. Especially, like, let's say for example that whole everything is a reference. Throughout every single one of this, there's not been a single moment I haven't heard each of us reference something when it came to making our villains and making our lands. And now that you have this going, you're wondering, how do I roleplay this stuff? Your reference that you've made for this villain is probably going to be noticed in this. Some players might take note of that. Some players won't. The players that don't are gonna feel a big surprise factor, and the players that do, they're gonna love this, and they might already have an idea of how the villain is going to be beaten, only for you to completely take the ball and turn it in on them, because the weakness that you have planned is not what they had in mind. And yeah, it's a huge list of options, and if you don't know which one to pick because they all sound good, roll the die, randomize it. It's nuts. To also not blue ball everyone else. Let's see. So we did rogues, we did Skittles, and we did JTRs. So let me hear on. Just be sure, just so I didn't mix up anything. Whose villain did I not do right now?
I have not done mine yet.
Okay, so hi. So we understand that yours was the influence through season of position or power or title, right?
Yeah.
Okay, please roll it. What did you get on your D20 roll?
I got a 10.
10? Okay, here we go. Lying or perjury. Perjury. The offense of willfully telling an untruth in a court after taking an oath or affirmation. Okay, so this person is lying through their teeth as their method of accomplishing their position or power of title to gain influence. And now, go ahead and please roll the D8.
Okay. Got a 1.
1. A hidden object holds the villain's soul. And now, while it's very easy to say that this could be a lich, let's take this around. The villain is not a lich, but they've actually made a deal with the devil. And so this devil deal that they've made, because they sold their soul to this devil, and the way the devil is holding their soul is actually in an object. This person is lying through their teeth, and the devil is actually constantly there as a type of like influencer to the crowd, constantly using his own magic to make the people believe his lies. And so this villain, who is, I'm the big bad one, I control everything, and here is the devil that works for me. Here's who you gotta fight if you're gonna beat me. The players, prep their weapons, get their spells ready, and begin the final battle with a pit fiend. That is the culmination of the entire process of them getting to this. It is nuts, the villain we've made for you. And it's like, all of this was like, at no point in this did it say use the devil. At no point in this does it say where the soul of the person is. In fact, we can make it that the person actually is a lich. And so from there, you have 2 lich problems. And so you realize liches are kind of like territorial creatures. They don't want... One is currently looking to get souls, and the other one's perfectly content. He probably has a nice income of souls due to the birth and death rate in his location. And let's see, who have I not also made a villain for? Maniacal, we did yours, right, or no?
We haven't done one for me.
Oh, here we go. So once again, we already did your scheme and your scheme and objective, right? Yours was it was the whole. Oh wait, mayhem, right, or no? Was that not it?
Are we talking about the shop guy, or are we talking about rolling?
Rolling.
Because I haven't rolled for it. I haven't rolled for anything yet.
Oh, here we go. So roll the d8 to see which of these you are.
Okay, D8.
Yeah.
That's a 5.
Okay, 5. Here we go. This is an interesting one. Passion. Now roll a d4.
D4. That's a 4.
This villain's objective is passion, and so his scheme or his method is destroy rivals for another person's affection. So this villain is actually there's a princess whose father has brought many suitors, and so this villain is actually killing off the other suitors.
Oh God, I'm a yandere. My villain's a yandere.
Yes, and now please roll the d20 for his method.
Oh shit.
Or her.
Yep, or her.
Or
It's the
her,
bachelor
them.
/ bachelorette. Oh God, that's what the villain is. It's just a person on the bachelor / bachelorette.
8.
8. That would be execution. Please roll a d8.
Oh my God.
Wow.
They really are.
Please roll another d8.
Roll another D8. That's a 7.
7 is impalement. So this villain's method of execution is by impalement. Now let's take this one of 2 ways. It could be framing the other suitors to the point where they through their framing they actually get killed off by the laws of the land, or this is an actual person who is so hell-bent on making things go their way, they themselves are the person who their calling card is the impalement through the heart to indicate, if I can't have her heart, then you can't have yours. And so he'll stab them right through the heart. And now we've created this type of like thematic for it all, right?
Oh
Just
God.
wake
I
up one
made it
day
yandere.
to a paled lover on the lawn. Yes,
Mhm.
that is his calling card.
And now please roll a d8 for their weakness.
Okay. And that's another 7.
The villain falls when an ancient enemy forgives its past actions. So, this person who seeks... Now, check this out. Now, what if I said this prince was someone who, in the past, had broke someone else's heart? Because he's kind of just like this... I will do anything to get to win this person's heart, but if I am no longer have any affection towards you, I'm going to drop you like yesterday's lunch. And so...
Why'd you drop yesterday's lunch?
Because it went in the toilet after I ate it.
Oh.
And so this villain, you realize that the person he's abandoned, you now have to go to a whole nother kingdom, because it turns out that a widow there, who maybe even the widow is like another queen or something like that, and her husband left her, and so she was left to handle the kingdom by herself. She's either like a widow who's in depression because of the fact that he left her, or maybe she's like now a really strong, independent woman who can never forgive him for what he's done. And so you realize, in order for you to stop him, you have to help her by doing quests in her land, getting her to believe you, and getting her to try to forgive him. And now that she's heading over to the other kingdom to go and sort things out, this other person has been killing suitors left and right. And so now we've created a time issue where every week, there are 10 suitors in total. Every week, the suitor is going to he's going to impale another suitor until he's the last one remaining. So this means that the players have 9 weeks to save the other suitors, stop this murderer from fucking becoming anything near this position of power, and potentially breaking the heart of another woman who is unlike the woman that you guys are helping.
Or the second option, if you're willing to write for that, you go kill the suitors. Depends on how quick you want the story over.
Right. Well, now remember this. The moment this villain seeks to get passion, his goal, his method is killing the other suitors. So by killing them, you're actually helping him. You're helping the villain of the story.
Yeah, why not?
There we go. And so that's like that's once again, this is that player ingenuity where like they want to help with him, and then all of a sudden you realize that to help the players quote unquote get back on track, you can make that the villain really like wants nothing to do with you, dirty peasants, get out of my way. And so he is very dismissive to the players. In fact, he hates the players for their status as adventurers. And
so now you've made it to where the players hate that person, and they're like, you know what, fuck you then, dude.
Exactly. And then you guys realize how he's going about it, and now we've gotten the players back onto the track of hating him. And so to stop him, they need to do something about that. But the issue is that this villain is not one that you can deal with brute force, because technically you'd be killing someone who is of so high a position of power, you'd be committing a crime. You need to deal with this with politics. And then you have to go to the other kingdom. The queen over there won't trust you guys, and so you have to go on in fights, you have to deal with monsters, and you have to earn the trust. We've earned trust by now providing combat for our combat-loving players. We provided role-playing by giving our players more of a reason to want to interact with more things. And we've created, what's I'm looking for? We've created political issues because the players can't deal with the villain by force. They have to deal with him through political means. And in order to accomplish those political means, you have to go along these quests, fights, and it's just we're looping back around, and you realize this is all one huge plot that now might contain 1 or 2 kingdoms in it. And so we've created one kingdom where the villain is in, and we've created another kingdom that is thriving and is perfectly fine. There's not really a lot of issues over here except minor side quest stuff that is in a whole nother kingdom. And once again, plot. We're dropping them in different areas of the world. Let's make the kingdom that's with the corrupt dude on the other side of like a week-long journey of an ocean in order to get to this kingdom here. And so we've separated 2 lands, and we've made whole other areas of the world. This is just
cool
world building, quest making, helping your players understanding what they want, and it's all just we're kind of just making this up as we go along, you know? Nowhere in this, maybe somewhere in this, there's like a thing in my subconscious that's referencing something, but it's all kind of just like we're making it up as we go. We're making it up as we go due to our experiences of what we've seen in the past through media, through our lives, and maybe through other games that we've participated in. What do you guys think of all this though?
I think you have actually set me up fairly nice, because as I've told you, I'm trying to do a Fallout homebrew, which is a big ambition for a beginner DM. But with everything you've given me, you've actually helped me figure out where I need to start with creating and how I need to go about doing it.
Here, take a look at this as well. So on the topic of creating villains, let me also help you out with this. So you've made an NPC. Here is kind of like there's a detailed NPC and there's a quick NPC, right? So
right.
This is a direct reference. This is one of the few times I'm just going to directly read off of this. Quick NPCs. An NPC doesn't need combat statistics unless it poses a threat. Moreover, most NPCs only really need 1 or 2 qualities to make them memorable. For example, your players will have no trouble remembering the no-nonsense blacksmith with the tattoo of the black rose on his right shoulder, or the badly dressed bard with the broken nose. two distinct things that your players can reference to know who you're talking about, and to remind you which NPC you've made up on the spot. So you only need 2 factors to make them memorable, and then now there's detailed NPCs. Now these are the NPCs that like are probably more significant to the story. And so for NPCs who play larger roles in your adventures, allow more time to flesh out their histories and personalities. As you'll see, 10 sentences can sum up the main elements of a memorable NPC. 1 sentence for each of the following. So when you're making a detailed NPC, you're going to do a sentence for each of these things. Their occupation and history, their appearance, their abilities, any talents they have, their mannerism, how they interact with others, any useful knowledge they have, their ideals, their bonds, and their flaws or secrets. With these 10 things, you can make a detailed NPC who, once again, you don't need a stat block for them. If you really need a stat block, go pick up the commoner one. It's 4 hit points and they have 10 across the board. Done. Super easy to remember, and they have like an AC of like 11, I think, or an AC of 10. Regardless, though, this is like a detailed NPC, but now that you've like, okay, their talent is that they're a bodybuilder. Now that commoner NPC who has 10 in all stats, we're gonna have to bump up their strength because that clearly means something. So let's make their strength 12, 14, or even 16. Let's make their dump stat, and they're an idiot though, so they have low intelligence. And notice this, there's no actual direct number for this. So let's say for high strength, they're powerful, they're brawny, or they're as strong as an ox. Oh yeah, look at my fucking muscles. Or their low ability, their intelligence is their low ability, so they are dim-witted and slow. And it's like this is like for detailed NPCs, this goes far. How to describe their appearance? You can roll a d20 for their appearance. You can roll a d6 for their high ability, a d6 for their low ability. Obviously, re-rolling because you can't have their high and low be the same. A d20 for their talent, a d20 for their mannerism, and so forth and so forth and so forth. There's tables that allow you to reference to make a perfect NPC, and sometimes the table is primarily if you get stuck or don't know which option to pick. You can really just like take a look at the list of 10 things and just roll with it, come up with stuff on the spot, and you're like, I don't know what to do for their abilities, or I don't know what to do for their talent. Head on over to the DMG, find the talent area. I guarantee you'll probably find PDFs online for this. Even people who've made their own tables for this stuff. And roll for it. Alright, that seems cool. Or, I don't like that. I'll roll it again. I'll roll again, and you roll 10 times until you finally hit the one that you like. Or maybe you want to come, after looking through all this and not like anything, you're like, why don't they have this? Oh, wait a minute, I'll just make that a thing. Blah, 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 blah. There is so much that the DMG provides, and I promise you, if you want to be a DM, this is some of the best investment of money that you'll ever have, because when I was starting a DM, I thoroughly studied this area. I fucking love villains, and it led me to design NPCs. Only later, when I was like, I think it was like 2 years after that, in my 6 years of being a DM, did I finally like, how am I gonna run mobs? Mob tactics, it's been here all along in the DMG. Some of the best resource you'll ever get. And I already own the DMG on D&D Beyond, so it won't tell me the price, but I think all of the books are all the D&D Beyond books are half the price of the physical copy, because A, it's convenient, B, there's no printouts, and C, you don't get the smell of new book.
That'd be wouldn't that be a con?
Yeah, the smell of the new book.
Right? It's great. Also, here's another side thing. I love that every single one of these books has a hilarious disclaimer. Disclaimer. Wizards of the Coast does not officially endorse the following tactics, which are guaranteed to maximize your enjoyment as a dungeon master. First, always keep a straight face, and say okay no matter how ludicrous or doomed the player's plan of action is. Second, no matter what happens, pretend that you intended all along for everything to unfold the way it did. Third, if you're not sure what to do next, feign illness, end the session early, and plot your next move. When all else fails, roll a bunch of dice behind the screen, study them for a moment with a look of deep concern mixed with regret, let a loose heavy sigh, and announce that Tiamat swoops from the sky and attacks. This is some of the best stuff. It's always a delight. But here, but I need the book, Xeno. By all means, if you don't have the money, find PDFs. As much as that's an easy thing to say, it's really hard for me to say that. I love Wizards of the Coast, and I mean it. If you're buying this, you're supporting them, and they make more stuff with this. People are gonna be like, they have enough money, I'm just gonna pirate anyway. But that to me sounds like someone who is just really. Yes, it is selfish to get what you want for free, and you feel like it's causing no harm. But it really does go a long way, because you realize that this one investment you made is going to lead to further investments. Please support the official releases. They work really hard in this stuff, and you're supporting what you love. Supporting what you love causes it room to grow, and that $25 maybe is the thing that breaks the camel's back, that allows them to go further beyond something. There's a lot that goes into this. The $25 also might go into what helps pay the people for their hard work and dedication on the books.
Yeah, that's food for them.
Yeah, it's food for them. Pay your stuff. I pretty much was, in the very beginning, I got PDFs, but it was only because I had the intention of eventually buying the books. But until I got the money, I was using the PDF, and because I love the PDF for what it provided me, when I finally had the money to buy the book, I bought the book, and it felt so cool because finally I had what I wanted to, either physically in my hands or on D&D Beyond at the push of a button, instead of having to scroll down through a long fucking PDF. And it turns out the page has to load, and the DMG as a PDF is really long. I mean, it's a big book, and I think it's the biggest of the 3 books. And just scroll down till you find the right section is a pain in the ass, and you're getting a lot of convenience owning it yourself. Let's see. Is there anything else you guys might be wondering yourselves going through all this?
The question again?
Well, are there any questions you guys have? Something you maybe been wondering going through, like everything we've talked about with world building, NPC villain making, what it is to make a campaign. I know it's always one of those, like, I'm gonna ask you guys a question because I'm asking you guys, like, on the spot. It's like, fuck, how am I supposed to ask a question about this? Welcome back to ATR.
No, I can't really think of anything.
Yeah, I'm kind of questioned out.
All right. Well, then here. I want to do this for you guys, okay? My people who want to learn how to be a DM, I want to give you a little bit of homework. So,
it's spring break, though.
What a better time to be working on homework for your hobby. Okay.
You're the kind of teacher I threw eggs at their
got us in the
car.
corner there.
So, you guys are gonna like this, okay? I want you guys to take a look at the player you've made, okay? Your player characters that you're making for any campaign, even if it's a player that, like, let's take a character for a campaign you haven't made for, or once again a player that's currently in a campaign you're in. Even if the story is not going to go further, even if the villain is never intended to, I want you guys to either come up with a detailed NPC who matters to your character background by using these 10 bullet points, or use the villain tables to roll up a new villain for them. To roll up a villain that matters to their backstory.
Alright.
And I'll go ahead and even make this easier. I'm going to go ahead and copy. And in the D&D section of the Discord, NPC traits, and in the villain section, it is going to be a direct copy paste to the link there. If you're in my campaigns, you'll have this access. If you aren't, I'd recommend looking up the PDF for it. And I'm gonna pin the NPC traits. Same thing. The tables are there in the villain link, but the best way I'm gonna say is try to come up, if you're doing an NPC way, try to come up with the NPC without the tables. If you really do need help, go with the tables. And on the other hand, if you're making a villain, you don't have to roll on the tables. You can just read through the tables and pick what you want. But regardless, I want you guys to either make an NPC or a villain.
So it's an NPC or villain.
Yes.
I'm making
If,
villain.
if you want, you can do both. Fuck it, I don't really mind. But I think it is with that we're gonna go ahead and give this stream a close.
I already have mine.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
I'm already ready for next week.
Damn.
Yeah.
All right. We'll go ahead and review those next week. In the
It's
meantime,
a character from a game I DM'd actually.
ooh.
Yeah.
So here we go. Thank you everyone so much for tuning on in. It's always a pleasure having you guys join us and enjoy watching the content. Sorry, if you did enjoy today's content though, please be sure to support the channel by following and subscribing on Twitch. For any stream notifications, possible chances to participate in content polls, follow my Twitter and join the Undead Legion on Discord. And for any previous stream VODs such as what we're doing now, check out the XenoLich YouTube channel. Please be safe and have a good night everyone.
And also remember, always support the official release, people.
Indeed.